Hey, this is Tyler with the Ready Man Group. We're going to learn today about how to make natural cordage, so stay tuned. Alright guys, so today we're talking about how to make natural cordage when you're in the backcountry. So first off, what is cordage? Why do we need it? Cordage is rope, okay? So the necklace I got right here is made out of dogbane cordage. This is synthetic sinew or cordage. So why is it important? Well, cordage is important because it's used in everything from a bow drill to Paiute deadfall traps to making shelters to fishing line. You're constantly needing cordage. The problem is you can't always guarantee that you've got it. Perfect example is like a POW situation. You're going to be running out of that thing in your underwear with your flip-flops if you're lucky. So it's really important to be able to have the skills to make natural cordage. One of the best plants that I've ever seen to make natural cordage is the dogbane plant. So I have a little bit of footage that I'll show you to help you identify the dogbane plant. And essentially it's got a nice pointy leaf. It's something that if you break over, it has some milk in the inside of the green stuff, but you don't want to use the green stuff if you can. It's preferable to use the 1-year-old stuff. So how do we identify if it's a year old? Well, fairly simple. If it's a year old, it's going to have that brown color to it. Okay, so you look for the stuff that has that brown color. That doesn't mean that you can't make cordage with the gray stuff. All that means is if you do use the gray stuff is going to come apart easier. It's not going to have as much tensile strength. So right here we have a perfect example of the plant. This is an example of the gray stuff. This means this is over 2 years old. It's got that gray external bark on it. Now, a good example of the brown stuff that you're looking for is right here. This is the ideal color for the brown stuff. Now, in order to identify the plant itself, I'm going to show you a nice close-up of these leaves. Okay? Now, just so you understand, anything with fibers can be made into rope. You don't have to use dogbane. It just happens to be one of the best materials in making very small ropes like fishing lines. So it's a really important one to be able to identify. So it has that leaf shape with those vines kind of spreading out like lightning bolts. If you break it, it doesn't come apart very well because it's full of all of the fibers that we're going to pull out. And it's full of milk. Okay? That milky substance is semi-poisonous. That's why we call it dogbane, because it will mess up your dogs. Now I can take this and strip off the leaves and take the green out of it, and I can do it from the green leaves, but there's no need. Essentially, wherever you find a stand of this stuff, it's usually going to be along the side of a river, and wherever you find a stand in the wet area, there's always going to be dead stuff on the ground. So if we look here, I've got dead pieces there, dead pieces there. I've got a whole stand of it right there. Okay, all of that dead stuff. Be sure to gather the dead stuff instead of the green stuff, because that's what you want in order to make your cordage. So you've got dogbane. Now what? Well, now you need to smash it. Essentially what we're going to do is we're going to separate the pith on the inside from the bark, which is the next layer out. 3 bark layers and an internal part. You need to remove 2 bark layers and the pith on the inside to get to that 4th stringy layer. So basically what we're looking for is this. We want to remove that stringy stuff from the inside because that's what we're going to use to make our rope. So how do we do that? Okay, before we get started doing anything, we're going to remove all of these little knobs up top. Where it starts to get messed up there, we're going to take that off the top so that we have our initial chunk of dogbane. I've got some ugliness down here at the bottom. Take that off as well. The very first thing that I need to do is remove this waxy bark on the outside. If I don't remove this waxy bark on the outside, it's going to make it slick in between the fibers. And if it's slick in between the fibers, the friction that is used to keep everything good to go will be missing. So the very first thing you do is remove that external waxy layer. And I like to go from knob to knob. So I've got a branch here and a branch here. and I just remove a little bit of that waxy layer, most of it's gone, and move on up to the next layer. You can kind of see it dusting off, and all I'm using is the back edge of my knife to remove that waxy layer. Once this entire waxy layer is gone, now I can smash it. Well, first thing that we do is we smash this. I like to take this, stick it out on cement or something, and step on it. Sometimes you don't have cement. So a secondary option is to take a rock or something that's not sharp, put it on the ground, and just smash it. So now that I've removed the waxy layer and smashed the dogbane, it's going to essentially make 4 chunks. Each one of these chunks is good for a small string. You can add them all together and make big strings. But what you need to do is to separate it first. So essentially I'll start from the bottom, and it already kind of naturally creates 4 pieces. So I'm going to split it down the middle, try to keep from messing up my strings too much, into these 4 pieces, okay? Once I've got the 4 separate pieces, so 2 here, 2 here, then I'm going to take this and fold it over my finger and break it. I'm going to pull from one direction, and that removes it, and it leaves this bark on the inside. As I start going down the stick, I pull one direction, pin it, pull the other direction. That way I don't remove the bark that I'm looking for. So I work this way, back and forth, all the way to the end of the stick. Until I have a pile of all of this removed bark. So once I've removed that waxy outer part and removed the pith from the inside, I have the internal string. The last thing that I'm going to do before I grind on it is I'm going to split it into 2 pieces, because if you think there's a fat part of the bottom of the stick and a skinny part, and I'm going to spin it around. What this does is it gives me continuity, or it makes sure that my string is essentially the same distance from the bottom to the top, so I don't have a really skinny string and then a really fat string. The very last thing I'm going to do is remove this stuff that I like to call the peanut shell. That is the last part of the bark. So basically what I'm going to do to get rid of that is to straighten all this up, put it together in my hands, and roll it together. Now if it's really dry, you're going to introduce water to the situation, and that'll help your hands roll this stuff up. So I'm going to grab some water. Now that I dip that puppy in the water, it should roll much easier. There we go. So this rolling process breaks off all that bark and removes it. This is important because the thing that makes a rope strong is how tightly it's twisted and how much friction it has. So that friction basically causes all these fibers to pull against themselves. The more fibers you have pulling against themselves, the stronger your rope's going to be. So basically I've ground that up. There's one side. Now I just need a little bit more. Okay, so I have my raw material, 2 good chunks here. Put that one away. So there's a couple of different ways to roll this stuff. The way I like to do it is down my leg. However, I got to get started. So in order to get started, what I'm going to do is just give this a good twist, right? I'm going to make sure one leg is longer than the other leg, and then I'm just going to give it a twist. So as I twist this, my right hand's twisting forward, my left hand's twisting back. This tightens up, okay? And it starts to create rope, right? Now, I can do this a couple of different ways. I can twist the right side away, pin it, twist that bottom side away, pin it, and then twist this away. And I can continue to do this by going away, away, towards, away, towards, away, towards. That just takes forever. Now it's nice and tight, but there's got to be a faster way to do this. So the way that I like to do this is down my leg. So what I mean by that is this. If I take this big piece and I roll it down my leg and pin it with my finger, that's nice and tight. I take this other one and I roll it, And what's going to start happening is that other one's, this third one's going to start to roll all on its own. The key to watch out for here is that you don't have one strand wrapping around the other strand. If one's tighter than the other, the one that's tight will be wrapped around by the other one. So it's very important to get this one tight, then get that one tight, and then kind of keep them like a V as you tighten them up, and it makes the string very quickly. Now, eventually you're going to get to the point where you've run out of string in the length of the tree that you have. There's a couple of different ways that you can do this. If you're going to add one leg and then another leg, just add a little piece and start twisting. But in this case, I'm going to add the whole thing. So all that I'm going to do is tighten up the middle of this, stick it right in the center, okay? I'm going to loosen up both of these so that they're flat, and then tighten them together. Now when I do this, understand that it's going to be a little bit fatter for a little bit of a distance, but I'm okay with that because I'm more interested in making something that's field expedient than I am in making something that's pretty. If I wanted it to be pretty, I would use about 1 inch and I would add in one side and then the other. That's why we have the offset. But again, for now, I just want this stuff to work. So as I twist this last little piece here, twist that one up, and just keep twisting it. As this works down my leg here, I will create a little bit more rope. And as you can tell, this technique works really fast. And fast is important if you're trying to make fishing line or something for a bow drill or whatever it is that you're going to do. Now, if you wrap this stuff tight enough, it will actually stay without tying a knot. However, because you'll probably be doing this for the first time, that last little piece here, I'm just going to take it and tie it in a quick knot, just a little overhand knot. And there's my rope. Okay? Now this little piece of rope is strong, but it's not going to be strong enough for a bow drill. So if I'm going to get a bow drill, I'm going to go 2 to 4 times the length of my bow drill and then double it. Let me trim this piece off first and I'll show you what I mean by doubling it. You can either hit these little chunks with a lighter or just cut them off. Now, in order to double this, I'm going to basically find the center of my rope, and the reason that I would double it is to give it strength. And I'm going to go the opposite direction that I did last time, okay? And continue to twist. And basically that doubles it on itself. Now another thing I can do is I can have a buddy hold this side and I can twist these two and it will end up wrapping itself up. Now because I'm doubling this, I'm going the opposite direction down my leg to create a thicker rope. And that's the technique that you would use to make a larger rope until it's big enough to use for a bow drill. Now you can see I just lost my length. So if you're going to double rope for bow drill, make sure that if you need 4 feet, you start out with 8 to 10 feet. If you need 2 feet, you start out with 4 to 8 feet in order to double it down to the size that you need. All right, that's been a quick tutorial on how to make cordage. The last note that I'm going to leave, and I'm going to unwind this doubling real quick, is it's always good when you have downtime in a survival situation to keep yourself busy. That employs your mind and keeps you from dealing with all those demons that say, I can't make it or whatever. So during downtime, make stuff like this rope and then save it for later. So just wrap it around your wrist, tie it in a little knot, whatever it is that you need to do. If you can, one interesting thing about this rope is you can undo, it's really hard to do with one hand. You can undo that tip so it's just got a little loop in it. Start this way. You undo that tip so it's just got a little loop in it, and all you do is tuck your knot inside of there and it will stay. That way you don't have to tie more knots, because knots tend to be the destroyer of ropes because they create hard angles which break the fibers. So it's better to either shoot it inside that loop or tuck it when you're doing stuff like making a shelter. All right, and that gives me the ability to pack some of that rope around. If I wrap a whole bunch in a big old long wrist, then I can pack this on my wrist until I find a hook and go fishing with it, or whatever it is I'm going to do with my rope. All right, guys, I hope this has been valuable to you. So thank you for watching my Ready Man tutorial.